into the online broadcast network, AfterBuzz TV. Over 20 million weekly downloads in over 150 countries, and your #1 source for after-show entertainment. AfterBuzz TV, the destination for TV superfans, producing aftershows for over 300 of your favorite TV shows, interviewing celebrities and showrunners, and bringing you behind-the-scenes exclusives. All thanks to E! Entertainment's Maria Menounos, producer Kevin Undergaro, and internet leader Akamai. Now, let the buzz begin!
Hey, that's right. Work hard. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Preachers of Detroit After Show. We want to thank you for tuning in. First off, I want to say that make sure that you follow us, go online, and you can find our presence at youtube.com/AfterBuzzTV. You can also subscribe to us on YouTube and SoundCloud. Make sure you do that. And if you want to live tweet during our show, you can do that at #ABTVPLD for Preachers of Detroit. Again, my name is Lem Gonzalez, and you can find me at The Poet Saint, and that's on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And next to me is my amazing co-host, Mr. Gary Thomas. Gary Thomas, where can they find you?
You can find me on Instagram and Twitter at I am Gary Thomas.
Yes. So I'm so excited because we've done this show for Preachers of LA, and now this is the spinoff, Preachers of Detroit, that we were promised, and I'm so glad. And I will say that it definitely delivered. I just want to get into this cast. This is an interesting cast.
Indeed.
I will say that I was very, how can I say, kind of blown away because they did a good job by not giving us too much in kind of the previews that I've seen. I didn't really see an extended trailer or anything about the show. So I just want to go into David Bullock. Let's Pastor David, yo. So the man is off the hook. So he pastors St. Matthew's Baptist Church. And his opening scene is he's smoking cigars with his brother and associate minister. And I mean, if that's what he does, that's what he does. But I thought it was interesting to lead in to that because, in the Christian world or what have you, that's kind of a taboo thing to do amongst ministers or amongst pastors, people in leadership. I don't know, Gary, what do you think about that?
I really didn't think much of it.
Yeah.
Honestly, I thought that was an amazing way to kick off the show because it showed the realness of the rawness of pastors in Detroit. So it's let's give them a shocker, a mind blower.
Right.
Let's kick off the show right here. And it already it shoots off from there.
Right. Well, I think it very much attributed to him kind of being what his role is going to be in this season.
Yes.
Because he's very much the rebel. He definitely speaks his mind. And I was mentioning to you earlier, he's kind of like what Dietrich was in Preachers of LA. Yes. He's kind of like he doesn't, hold any punches, doesn't pull any punches. So he also said something interesting that if Jesus... Go ahead and continue with that.
He said if Jesus were in America today or something along those lines, that his name would be David Bullock. And I thought that was so bold.
Right. He said, I think I quoted it right. He said if Jesus was in America and he was black, he would be David Bullock. And first of all, that in itself, you comparing yourself to Jesus, and I understand the scripture says that we are to be like Jesus. We're supposed to be like him. But to say that if Jesus was here, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that. I really, Pastor David Bullock?
I don't know. See, my thing is with this particular pastor, Pastor Bullock, is I think that he has amazing ideals. Mm-hmm. It is an ego thing. It's a spirit of ego there. Right. So it comes off the wrong way at times. Right. It comes off abrasive. It comes off as if he thinks he's better or above people. Mm-hmm. But in reality, if you really get to the root of what he says some very powerful things. So the ego is what is going to lead his character throughout everything. And that's what everybody's going to associate him with. Right.
Absolutely. He also said something very interesting as well, which, again, I feel is another taboo thing in the Christian world, where he was talking about intimacy. And he kind of alluded, he didn't say it quite outlandishly, but he kind of said that intimacy without marriage is kind of okay. That's what I got from it. Which again is something that I think fits what he's trying to do. He's trying to say, this is me, you take me as I am, and that's how it's going to be. I'm not going to fit the mold.
I don't necessarily think he was saying it was okay.
Okay.
I think that he was saying that I'm going to be real. I'm going to live in the reality of today. Mm-hmm. And that is a reality of today. It's probably a reality of the people that he ministers to.
Sure.
So he has to be able to be relatable to them, and
Right.
and really, and he's so much into the heart of Detroit and what is the issues are there that he's in the middle of it. He wants to stay in the middle of it and stay real and stay honest of what's going on.
Right. Okay. I'll take that. I think that's a good thing. Moving on to one of the other pastors that's going to be on the cast, Pastor Don Shelby. He pastors Burning Bush Ministries. His wife is Benita Shelby, and he has 5 kids, which is
Shelby
the
Five.
Shelby Five, kind of reminiscent of the Jackson Five. And I thought that was interesting that he was kind of directing them as they were singing,
Or
kind of
lack
telling them,
thereof.
right. I don't want to say it, but yes, there was a little struggle there. But that's his kids, and he's kind of molding them. And so I thought it was interesting. What did you think of Pastor Shelby and kind of what he portrayed himself to be?
First of all, Pastor Shelby is in Ypsilanti, Michigan.
Okay,
That is 30 minutes outside of Detroit.
so he's
You're in a small town.
okay. So
A small town close to, right next to Ann Arbor.
Okay.
Which is right next to University of Michigan, a very prominent city.
Okay.
You're nowhere near Detroit or the real issues of Detroit. Now, a lot of people who are from Ypsilanti must say they're from Detroit to make things easier, but
Sure.
you're not really there in the heart of things. You're 30 minutes away
Right.
from the real city itself.
right. So that's like saying you're from L.A., but you're really from Rancho Cucamonga.
Exactly.
Okay. Got it.
Exactly.
Okay. I just wanted to get it. Got it. For those people that are on the West Coast. Got it. Okay. So he's not really saying he preaches to Detroit. Obviously, all of these people are in Michigan and they're very close to Detroit.
Yeah.
Their churches are in Detroit. And we'll get into this in a second, but David Bullock, Pastor Bullock, he kind of called some of them out about that.
I agree.
Because when he was, they were having their powwow, which we'll get into in a minute, he was saying, how many of you actually are in Detroit? And it was only him and Bishop Vaughn
Yes.
were the only two. The rest of them were on the outskirts, suburbs, whatever you want to call it. So, I think you can look at that one of two ways. You can look at it as, okay, he's prosperous. He wants to live in a nice area. And so this is where he lives. But obviously he's from Detroit or what have you. Or you can look at it as probably what Pastor Bullock would look at it as is you're kind of escaping the dangers or where you're the city that you're really trying to minister in. Instead of being in that city, you're kind of trying to, give a resonance that this is what they are and this is where I am, and you're kind of separating yourself.
Well, I see it as that, but you can't negate them for wanting to have a better life for their kids and
Sure.
their families. However, Ypsilanti is not near Detroit. However, Bloomfield, and I think Bloomfield was where one of the other pastors lived.
Right.
That's a
Yes.
suburb of Detroit.
Right.
Very close.
Okay.
Ypsilanti is almost so far
Right.
removed.
Rancho Cucamonga.
So yeah, it's like Rancho Cucamonga is really removed from
right,
LA.
right.
So you don't really could think about that place.
Sure.
However, you would think about, the Burbanks, and you'll think about, the North Hollywoods, because
Right.
those are still in LA. Those are still,
Gotcha.
Santa Monica, those are still in LA.
Sure.
But nice neighborhoods to
Right.
live in LA.
Sure.
So I think that being on a little bit on the outskirts, there's nothing wrong with that. But something about their work being in the city is really not there.
Not there. Okay. The next person is Bishop Corletta Vaughn, who is she's a pastor of Holy Ghost Cathedral. She is as she stated, she's the first Black female bishop in Detroit. And I thought it was interesting to have her on the cast because I figured because some of these pastors, especially those that were part of which they did get into in discussion, Church of God in Christ, I know that they very much frown upon women as bishops. That's not something that's allowed in the denomination, Church of God in Christ. And so I knew that it would be instant, if you want to say, drama or instant,
Yes.
friction among some of the other pastors. I thought she had some interesting things that she said. First of all, she's married to a gentleman by the name of Gilbert Vaughn, but she also said that if it came down to it, she didn't know if she would choose her ministry over her marriage. She didn't know which one, if she had to choose one of the two. And I thought that was an interesting statement because typically it kind of goes hand in hand. But with her, she feels like if it came down to it, I don't know if I wanted to be married, if I wanted to continue my leadership in my ministry. What do you think about that statement?
First of all, I think that Kojic, and I'm going to be bold in saying this, Kojic is misinterpreting the word at times.
Okay.
So I think that battle right there was already a fire starter because they're so engraved in the rituals and the rules of the religion that they're not really interpreting what God's word is.
Okay.
So that's a little different.
Okay.
But when it comes down to choosing, I think that was an interesting point of view because a lot of people are scared to walk in their purpose and the risk that it takes to walk in your purpose. And she's saying, I'm not sure right now. You know, it's hard. It's a battle of a decision whether I should walk in my purpose or be with the man I love.
Right.
Because which one is where's God going to be?
Right.
And she wants God there all the time.
Sure.
So I didn't think there was anything wrong with that. I think it was actually more of a stronger statement for her to say that as a woman, to say, especially as a bishop, would I choose this man or that man?
Right.
So I thought it was, an interesting battle for a lot of people, and people can, interpret her however she wants.
Right.
However they want, I should say. But
Right.
just because it's her husband doesn't mean that's the person she walks in her purpose with.
Sure. Okay. I do know, and for myself, just to piggyback off of that, I know that I grew up in a Pentecostal church. It wasn't Kojic, but it was a Pentecostal
Very
church.
rule-oriented.
Very much so. And I do know that the pastor of that church, he did not feel that women should be bishops. That was something that he said openly. So I just wanted to kind of get, what the interpretation is. I will say, though, that she did say 1,500 churches call her bishop. So I think that's a very powerful statement that she's, a leader of 1,500 churches. So these are all pastors, and not all these pastors are women. A lot of these, probably the majority of the pastors, are men. So for them to, consider her a leader, that's a big statement, because she obviously, in their eyes, is where she needs to be, and she's accepted her calling as bishop.
I say it like this: for example, when you're reading Ephesians and it talks about the body of Christ and the joints, it does not say the apostle, the teacher, the pastor, the evangelist are men.
Right.
It doesn't say that. It says there are joints in the body.
Sure.
So why does it have to be man or woman?
Right.
And then, so for statements such as from Dorinda in that conversation that I believe men can lead better.
Right.
Well, I guess Esther didn't lead.
Right.
Esther wasn't a leader.
Right.
So I just thought it was a very interesting conversation that they're almost frowning upon her in this room because she's a woman, but she's a bishop.
Right.
Like, is that her calling?
Right.
Like, how is that the word of God? Because you're frowning upon her.
Right.
I didn't understand that whole conversation at all.
Well, I think it just goes to show overall, and I'm sure this will come up a lot of times in this season, that these are very, these people that they're part of different denominations. I think in what we saw in Preachers of LA, they kind of sound like a lot of them, with the exception of one of the pastors who was Kojic. And he did, speak his mind about, how he believed about women in their place and things of that in the ministry. But the other ones were kind of non-denominational. So the issues of denomination didn't really come up as much. With this, they're very strong in their denominations.
Yes.
From the fact of, how they believe, their churches. I mean, just the way they introduce them, you could tell that it's going to be a battle of, it's going to be a battle, basically, between them when it comes to that. Which, I hope that it all comes out, because, again, these are all pastors that are pastoring congregations, and it should be about the congregations. But we'll see that some of them, maybe it's not.
No.
We'll see. Dorinda Clark Cole. I love that she's on the show. I'm a super big fan of the Clark sisters. I grew up listening to them. All of them. Amazing. So I was glad to see that she was on the show. She actually is an evangelist in the Church of God in Christ. Like I said before, she's one of the Clark sisters. And she's married, and her daughter is her personal assistant, which is interesting. Also, we have Bishop Clarence Langston. And he's the one that's the bishop-elect. And he's the one that had big feud, which we'll talk about in a second, with Bullock.
They were our favorite.
Oh, man, this is going to be an ongoing thing, I see. And his wife is Robin Langston. They have 3 kids. And he was talking a little bit about his testimony of that when he was younger, he used to sell drugs with his dad, which is crazy. So we can see that he has that kind of history, and he kind of came out of that. And of course, now he's a minister of the gospel. And then lastly, as far as all of the pastors that we'll see in the cast, is Pastor Timothy Alden. Now, Pastor Timothy Alden, those of you that watched The Preachers of LA, which I'm sure a lot of you that watch that are watching this show as well, he was on that show. And he was brought in and even said that he did move to LA for a brief time.
Yes.
So while he was living in LA, he ended up being part of guest appearance on the show, and he was talking about him being a virgin because
for 50 years.
Yeah, right. He has never touched a woman. He's never kissed a woman. So I mean, this dude is like boom, 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 like. Yeah, it's crazy. And in Preachers of LA, kind of going back to that show, he had talked about that, and he actually gave kind of an abstinence type talk to some of the young people at one of the churches there, of the pastors that was on the show. So it sounds like he's talking about that. He's passionate about the abstinent movement. He was adopted by his pastor. He says that he's this white guy, but he really connects more with the African American community, and that's where he's at. So, what did you think about him, just as a person?
I thought it was sometimes a little bit hard to believe his story, because if we want to talk about the stereotypes of culture, a white man with this, so to speak, black swag,
Right.
that's a thing a lot of women go after. So you've never even kissed a woman, and you never had sex, and you're 50 years old. It was a little bit hard for me to believe, and I think he's in his 40s. I don't think he's quite 50 yet. I think he's in his 40s. Somewhere still a long time.
Yeah, right.
So and he makes this abstinence thing the complete drive of his ministry.
Right.
There's so many other things to touch on.
Sure.
And how do you expect to make change in Detroit, of all places?
Right.
And you only preach abstinence.
Right.
I didn't even think that was a real part of the conversation at the Power Hour. I didn't even think it should have been brought up. Like,
when
you really shouldn't even brought this up.
Right.
Because it has nothing to do with the poverty or the changes in the city that they want to do.
Right.
That didn't make any sense. So, Tim Alden, a little sketchy in my book right now.
So do you think he's not, like, do you think what he's saying is not believable? Do you think he's kind of stretching it to push his agenda? Or do you think he's really... He really is. I mean, he's obviously passionate about it. We're not denying that, I don't think. But do you think that there's truth to what he's saying?
Sure. I don't want to discredit the man. I don't want to say I don't believe him. But I definitely think that he is making it a coin off of driving that.
Okay.
That's his story. That's his storyline right there.
Right.
And he wants to be that. That's going to make him big. Like that makes him interesting to people. That makes him interesting to viewers.
Sure. And that's exactly what he was on Preacher of LA. He was preaching that too. He was on there, and that was literally everything he was saying. Every other word was, "I'm a virgin." I'm a virgin. I never kissed a woman.
Well, good for you. God bless your story. But no one really cares.
I mean, that's his thing. So anyway, let's get into the powwow, because we've kind of touched on that. All the pastors kind of got together, and this is where we kind of, I think, gave us as viewers a chance to kind of see where everyone was going to be coming from, as the season goes on. Of course, David Bullock, he definitely was against everything. I mean, he challenged everybody to the tune of, and he really got on Langston, Bishop Langston, a lot, just because he was saying, basically, you're talking about reaching your community, but you don't even live in the community. You don't even know what the community is going through. And I can see some of his points. I think that he made some great points. Pastor Bullock did. I think it was just his delivery. It was very off to, a lot of what they were saying, because it was like, everyone has their ministry. I think God gave them their ministry for a purpose. I think the fact that, and he was harping on them for, it's like, I'm in this great big house, and, I see you guys drove up your Bentley to get here. And it's like, okay, if God has blessed them with that, and I think it was Bishop.
Now, we are misinterpreting God's blessings right now.
Okay, so you're, wait, okay, go ahead.
Now, he does bless in abundance.
Sure.
However, don't misuse what a blessing is, because that is far beyond. If you're a congregation, like he made a very valid point when he said, made the comment about pastoring and prosperity.
Right.
He said really pastoring and pimping.
Right.
Pastor David was on fire. Now, I think that, like what we said, his approach is a little bit off, and I think that's why they can't accept the challenge. And I don't think they've ever been challenged. In the church, how often do you challenge your pastor?
Well, no, it doesn't happen.
It doesn't happen, especially
happen.
not in churches that are predominantly black.
Right.
They take the word, they let it fill them up, and they utilize it from how he interpreted it. They don't interpret it for themselves and say, "Hey, pastor, wait a minute, I was reading it and read it like this."
Sure.
So the fact that someone's coming there and challenging them, challenging the word on them, and challenging their lifestyle, they weren't ready.
Right.
They weren't ready.
And I will say I did miss one pastor who was obviously an integral part of this, because this is the home that they were in, which is Bishop Charles Ellis. And he's the one that he's a pastor, kind of a pastor. He's Pentecostal Assemblies of the World is what he's over, his organization. And he has a huge compound. I mean, it looked like a hospital, a church. I mean, daycare, zoo,
upstairs, downstairs, all around.
There was a lot going on. So Pastor Charles Ellis, Bishop Ellis was one of the ones when he was talking, he was kind of directing a statement to, basically saying about what I was just saying about that. And I think that, I mean, again, if you pastor a church of 10 people and everyone is impoverished and you're driving a Bentley, yeah, I think there's an issue there. You know what I'm saying? Like, how is that happening? But at the same tone, I think that God can bless you with certain things. I think he wants you to live in prosperity. I think the one thing, and this is what I believe, my opinion, Pastor Bullock was saying is, you can't lose sight of the ministry. You have to minister to your people. It's not just about what you have and saying that God can bless you. You have to go in and show them how God can bless them. Give them the tools to how they can get out of poverty. You know, and I think that's what he was saying. Just like there was the scene when he was, you know, helping to feed the hungry, you know, and he had all those things there. It's like, are you doing that? Are you giving them the tools? Or are you just telling them that God can make a way and then going and driving off back home? Bentley. Right. So I think that's what he was trying to say. But again, I think we can agree that it was kind of his tone and what he was doing. But because these were all pastors, you know, they're peers. So I think he felt like, well, I'm a pastor too, so I'm going to tell you what I feel. Of course, no one likes to be challenged. I don't care if you're a pastor or not. You just don't want to be challenged in something that you feel is, you know, what you're supposed to be doing. So, I mean, that was kind of the conversation. I think it was interesting that everybody kind of brought their agenda to the meeting. So Bishop Vaughn, she was saying, well, I want to address, sexism. Sexism in the church.
I agreed. I think that is an issue in Detroit. I think that was a very valid, you know, point to bring across. Sexism is huge. It's a huge thing. And to see a powerful, you know, black woman step up into Detroit and be a bishop and lead the community, that would be amazing. We don't see that often. And I think they want her to kind of take a backseat. And I think that we should go back to an interesting statement you said. They're peers. They don't look at each other as peers, though.
Well, sure.
So we see them as peers.
Sure.
So that's why part of the conversation got heated in that sense, because they don't see each other as peers.
Right.
They don't respect, you know, Bishop Vaughn.
Well, definitely Bishop Vaughn is not a peer of theirs. They feel that she's probably ordained by God to preach the gospel, have a congregation. But obviously there were some of them, one of them being Bishop Langston, who said, Pastor Shelby, who said, I don't agree that there should be bishops, you know, and they're not allowed in the Church of God in Christ. That's just how it is.
Dorinda is an evangelist. So, you know, pastors are not necessarily considering an evangelist on their level. And then, you know, some pastors are megachurch pastors and some have smaller churches. You know, that's already a competition right there. So Eagle was everywhere in this whole room. So I mean, I don't think they see each other as equal. I don't think they see each other on a level playing field.
I think you said a good point. I said we see them.
Yeah, we are completely I was here with you, but I think that because they don't, that lack of respect for each person's role in the show. That's why that conversation went left like that.
Like really quickly. And it was interesting too when Bullock and Langston got together, when they had their kind of one-on-one, which I don't know what he thought was going to come of that. But Langston was the one, Bishop Langston was saying how we should, you know, he was kind of challenging him, like, you know, when you kind of came to and you were challenging everyone, I don't think that was appropriate. I think your language or whatever, because they are our elders in a sense. That's what kind of the term he used. And we're kind of here. So yes, he said, no, you shouldn't have been able to say those kind of things because you're not at that level. And of course, Pastor Bullock is like, well, how dare you? Because I'm speaking the truth. And then he started giving statistics and things of that nature to kind of challenge what he's saying.
Facts are facts.
And then he just, Bishop Langston was like, I'm going to pray for you. Like,
that took me out. That took me out. This is why would you just in the middle say that? I'm just going to pray for you. That was just like the biggest church cop out right there. And he said, and then Pastor David was just like, okay, I'm just going to leave.
Right.
I'm just going to leave.
How about I do this?
How about I just get up and walk away?
How do you feel about this? Well, I think that's just where Pastor Bullock is. It's like and again, I don't know much about Detroit, but I'm sure that what we're seeing, a lot of it stems from probably the culture. And when I say the culture, the church culture in Detroit, you know, whether it has this division between denominations or whether there's, you know, whatever's going on. So I think this is a good indicator of what goes on. So Pastor Bullock, he sounds like he's kind of fed up with a lot of the things that go on in ministry. He feels that these pastors of these large churches or in general are not doing their part to help the community, you know, when they have these things that go on. One of the first things that happened when he went over to Bishop Ellis, he was like, I want to do this event to reach the community. I want you to come and speak. That's where you could see his heartbeat is. And Bishop Ellis was like, okay, well, I want to have a powwow, you know? And so that was like, okay, I'm going to think about that, but then I'm going to have a powwow, so I want you to come to that.
Come to my grand house
and talk with other pastors.
Do what I want you to do.
Right. So, I mean, it seems like there's a tug of war with what's going on. There's a lot of dissension in the ranks, as you can see. I think they're all... God has called all of them. Yeah. I don't deny the call of any of them, but I think that it's going to be interesting to kind of see how they coexist with one another, you know, as the show develops, because they obviously have different viewpoints of different things. It was Shelby was also the one, and I could see where Bishop Vaughn, you know, he said women have a place in the ministry. And of course, she didn't take that well because of how, you know, of course, the tone is like, oh, they have a place in the ministry.
It was like she said that word.
Right.
Place.
Right. And then, like you said, it's interesting because Dorinda Clark Cole, who is also Kojic, she was co-signing.
Yeah.
She was basically saying, well, yeah, you know, and that's where kind of the statement came up. Is that where the statement came up? Men are better leaders or something like that?
And when she said the statement, and I agreed, I read one of the tweeters. Somebody was tweeting this. She had a certain level of disdain in her voice when she said it. It's almost as if she doesn't believe it herself.
Oh, okay. Like she's been made to say that. Or that's kind of the culture.
Yeah,
so
it's kind of it's a trained thing to do.
To say.
Trained thing to say.
Right.
And it really didn't like flow from her spirit where it was like positive. I was like, wow, do you believe this?
Do you believe that? Well, I mean, and that could be, you know, an issue. That could be something that maybe she struggles with, you know, and maybe we'll see that develop, you know, as the show goes on. I want to point out one of the other things that Bullock said, which I thought was really, this guy's bold. He said Dr. King failed. And I said, wait, time out.
I think everybody was like...
It's still Black History Month. Like it's February. Like, I know it's still happening in February, but yo, son, like, I mean... And I, you know, he gave the points of what he was trying to say, but it was just like the way he said it. It's like, Dr. King failed. And it's like, hold on a second. Yes, there's strides that we have to make, you know, within the African-American community and with things that go on that we don't like and where we need to go. But to make a statement like that, like you lead in with that, of course, it's almost like shock value.
I was speechless.
Yeah.
I didn't get the root of it.
I mean,
it was just like,
I don't know if there was any root there.
Right. It's like, you just talking now. You just talking. I think why does he have such great things to say, but he follows it up with such a stupid thing to say?
Well, because he wears
offensive thing.
He wears yellow jackets. I mean, that's one thing. So,
did you see how all of them were dressed out?
Right.
They really thought they were sharp.
Oh, of course.
But see, that is a trait of Detroit.
Right. Oh, the clothing. Oh yeah. I mean, that's again, and that just shows you where different cities are with how they, you know, how they are.
I know this is the difference in the preachers of LA to preachers of Detroit.
Hugely different. It's hugely different. I mean, I think with Bullock, I think he's just again a type of person. He is very much shock value. You know, he's going to tell you something and he's going to expect a reaction out of you, and that's what I got from him in this first episode. I think he's very smart. He's intelligent, but I think that he's that type of person. Even when you saw, it was kind of brief, but they were talking about, are you ever going to get married? You know, and he's like, well, you know, it was the first date thing. It was when they were having the man talk with smoking cigars. And it was like, it's like I keep having these first dates and it's the first and last date. So it's almost like, it's like I want to even buck against the fact that I have to be married because I'm a pastor. Because typically pastors are usually married, you know, and if they're not married, they're either in between or whatever the case is. But you don't find too many single pastors of his age. And so his thing, and he's never been married before. So it's like, well, I don't have to be married to minister, to be an effective minister. And I think that's one of the things, again, his traits. Like, I'm going to be out of the norm. I'm not going to say what you want me to say. I'm not going to do what you want me to do. I'm going to be the man I am. And that's how God made me, and take it or leave it. And that's the kind of stigma I think that he puts out there.
I think that's the shock. I think that's the value of the show overall. It has a lot of downfalls, especially with the church and the community. But I think that is the human value. And I like that he's human. He's real.
Oh, yeah.
He's a person. He's not some pastor who's trying to be above the congregation and seem invincible. Like all he does is everything that's within the word. And he doesn't do anything wrong. He doesn't live outside of the word. I think that's what shows that these people are human.
Right.
They cry, they laugh, they mess up, just like the rest of us who are not called to minister.
Sure. No, I mean, and that's what I think Priests of LA showed as well. They did show the human side of a lot of these pastors. Some pastors, they, you know, kind of with editing and with whatever they wanted, they kind of like, oh, only show this.
Right.
But I think even with this whole group of people, I don't think we'll get that. I think we will get down to the heart of it. I can see maybe someone like Bishop Ellis maybe not giving too much out, you know, just because of the way he kind of portrayed himself. And
not Bishop Ellis.
Yeah. I don't see that
You're
happening.
not going to get anything out of the perfection of the Shelby Five and this whole facade that he's living in.
Yeah, I think Bishop Ellis and Pastor Shelby, I think they're not going to show. I mean, this is my opinion, just on what we've seen so far. I think we'll definitely get it out of Bullock. And then, of course, I saw the previews too. I think Dorinda is going to show some sides, some human sides. I think we'll get it out of Alden. I think he has a story to tell. I think, and that's why he's on this show, because I think he wants to share his story. I think there's some things that, you know, from him being adopted as an adult, it seemed like he was in that picture. He was in that picture. It was like he was adopted, like he's a little kid, and he's like super grown with a beard. I'm like, wait, when were you adopted? Like, how long ago?
I missed some of that storyline. It just kind of like popped up. The picture was there and it was gone. It was like, wait.
Like, huh? Like, but that picture was funny because I was like, yo, son, adopted when? Like at 31? Like, when were you adopted? Like, I don't know that counts, but I think there's more to his story, and I think that's why he's on the show. Because if you think about it, all of these are very, you know, well-established pastors, and then you have this guy. So I think he's on there because there's something more with him. I think there's going to be something more with this whole abstinence thing because he's so, you know, passionate about it and so, you know, adamant about putting that out there. And every other word is, I'm a virgin, I'm abstinent, I'm a virgin, you know, so it's almost like somebody every other word saying, I'm a Christian, I'm a Christian, I'm a Christian. Yeah. So I think there's something behind that we'll probably, I hope that, you know, the show gets into and delves into. Is there anything else you think that we missed as part of this show?
You know what? I think that only thing with Tim Alden, I think that you're right about his storyline. Yeah. He said some interesting comments about he could have been, you know, dead if he wasn't adopted. Right. Maybe there is something. I'll give him that chance. I'm gonna give him that chance, but I don't want to hear this abstinence thing too much more.
Oh, I think you're gonna hear it. I think it's gonna be heard. So at this point, I think it's a good time to get into predictions. Let's do that.
And now, your AfterBuzz TV predictions.
All right. Gary, so predictions going into just going into the next episode. What do you think we're going to continue as far as like storylines? What do you think is going to happen with any different of the cast members? What do you think is going to happen?
Pastor Bullock. I'm waiting to see if he finds a rib, if he finds a woman within this whole thing. I think he's gonna find some. I think somebody is gonna infiltrate this, and it's gonna be an interesting storyline. I want to see, and I hope that with Evangelist Dorinda, that some barriers are broken. Okay, I think they will be. I think that there was so much power in that family. It's a family of women.
Sure,
you know that something is going to change. People are going to see her differently. Some barrier is going to change within her mindset. I don't have any predictions about Shelby because I don't think there's going to be any surprises.
Okay, so you think it's going to be what it is?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's pretty much my prediction so far.
Okay.
Well, Bishop Vaughn. I don't know if I predict whether her husband is just never going to come back.
Yeah, based on the previews.
Yeah, based on the previews. And you know, there's a little bit of gossip going on. You saw that in the previews that they were talking about they live in separate homes.
Correct.
I think this may be the end of them.
Yeah.
I think we're going to come to the point where we have to see if she has to make the decision between her ministry and her man.
Interesting. Okay. Well, I think going forward, in the previews, it did look like Pastor Bullock was on a date. So so it did kind of appear that way. But I will say I don't think he's going to find anybody.
Why not?
Like, I just don't. This man, no. I don't think he's going to find anybody. I think he's going to go on a date. I think he's going to continue. I predict that he's going to continue to be that guy that everyone's going to basically kind of, knock up against. He just has that presence. So I think he's going to continue in that vein. I think we are going to see some barriers broken with Dorinda. I think there's going to be some things with Corletta that are going to expose her. It's just going to basically expose her life, what is going on behind closed door, because as we can see, it looks like they really promoted the fact of her marriage, and it's going to be interesting to see if that has to do with because she is a bishop and her husband is submissive to her in ministry, interesting. So I don't know, but I'm excited. I'm excited about the show. Again, this has been the first episode of the Preachers of Detroit After Show. I've been your host, Lem Gonzalez. Again, you can find me on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. That's at The Poet Saint. Gary, tell us again where they can find you.
I am Gary Thomas. Instagram and Twitter.
All right. Thanks again. We'll see you next week.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.